folks. My name is Michael Myers, and I have the privilege of serving the SOM community as Director of Admissions for Inclusion and Diversity. And within that space and role, I get to focus on sort of special populations, right? People who are thinking about business school, and have different identities that map back to even some of our very own affinity groups. And so tonight, I'm super excited to be hosting one of our first versions of this panel with members and leaders from Yale's SOM's own first-gen low-income club. And I'll have them introduce themselves in a moment, but I just wanted to give you a breakdown before we do that of what to expect for the evening. And so when you registered for this event, you were able to submit some questions, which we've incorporated into this panel. And we're going to spend about a half an hour or so speaking as a panel. And then after that, we're going to move into breakout rooms where each student will have an opportunity to host their own breakout rooms, and you'll all be able to sort of float in and out as you wish, and ask some of the more pressing questions on your minds that may have not been covered in the panels. And so this series, the Inside the Community series, has been super exciting. This is the last piece of it. And so if you missed any of the other identities that were covered, please check out our YouTube channel here shortly. But tonight we're going to be focusing on first generation college students. And so without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone on over to Cindy to introduce themselves. And then if you can pick the next person, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. So as Michael introduced, I am Cindy. I'm a first-year MBA student at Yale SOM right now. Before coming to SOM, I was a consultant in New York City, and right now with Yale SOM, I'm looking to pivot to tech to do in-house consulting work. Sorry, trying to remember my list of intro questions I have to hit. So at SOM, I am one of the first-year leaders for First Young Low Income Club, as well as a co-president for Internship Fund, where we raise a lot of money for students who are going into nonprofit internship for the summer. And then for my MBA journey, I had a long-term partner that didn't come with me. So kind of there was a lot of conversation between back and forth around that about like my MBA decision before coming in. So if people are interested, definitely feel free to ask me about that. And with that, I am going to pass the mic to Kevin.
Hey, thanks, Cindy. So my name is Kevin Mejia, and I'm currently a second-year MBA. Originally, I'm from Houston, Texas, so I studied chemical engineering in college. I worked for ExxonMobil as an engineer, and then for the National Institutes of Health, which is a pretty big pivot. This past summer, I interned at a biotech company out in the Bay Area called Genentech in corporate finance. And as far as my MBA experience, it's been really great. A highlight of my first year was going to Kenya as part of the IE experience. And here at SOM, I'm heavily involved in the Fly Club, the First Gen Low Income Club. I'm a second year leader. I actually, my partner lives with me. So if anyone has any questions around that, I'm happy to answer that as well. And last but not least, Seidy.
Thank you. I know I've seen a couple of you, I think just last week, so happy to see you all again. My name is Seidy Pacheco. I am a first-year leader at the First Gen Low Income Club at the Fly Club here at SOM. I'm also involved with ALBA, so this is the Latin American Hispanic Student Business Association group here on campus, as well as involved with a few other student clubs, so the Mang Impact Investing Fund and Social Impact Consulting Club. So I've definitely gotten very involved this past the last couple of months. Before SOM, I was working in Los Angeles for a network of charter schools. So I was previously doing enrollment marketing and kind of like just marketing and recruitment for that in the nonprofit space, and we'll be pivoting into consulting. So I was lucky enough to do some pre-MBA recruiting prior to arriving at SOM. So I know where I'll be headed next summer. So if anyone has any questions about what that looks like and pivoting from the nonprofit into the consulting world, I'm really happy to answer any questions about that. I also moved here with my partner, so definitely had a lot of conversations moving across the country into a brand new city and kind of having to find a job and integrate into this community. So that has definitely been a journey as well. So please feel free to jump in and ask any questions that you have.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, let's jump right into this. And so I think it's good to sort of define some of these terms, right? Because when you think about being a first generation college student, a lot of times people think almost immediately in the context of the undergrad space, right? Because to be in a business school, you've already graduated college. And for some of you, you may even have had some really gainful employment experience after, right? And so when it comes to the context of choosing a top business program, I'm curious what was at the forefront of some of your minds, especially as you've stepped into the space of leadership of the Fly Club and even its own development. And feel free to jump in. I'm happy to rephrase the question if it was a little too wordy.
I can start. So for me personally, I came to MBA with the hope of kind of like taking a break from working, because for me personally, working before coming to SOM was kind of exhausting. So the biggest part that I value was culture. So when I was recruiting for MBA, I coffee chatted a lot of these second year students, and I felt like Yale SOM was the one was the school that fitted best with my personality. So for me, like the culture fit was the most important piece. Obviously, there is also like the financial aspect that I kind of consider, but I think there are a bunch of resources that could help with that. So kind of with that, like it's mostly like culture, the vibe, if I would be happy with the place I am.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Cindy said. For me, what I was going for was culture. It's going to be 2 years of your life, right? You want to be somewhere where you're happy. For the most part, a lot of the top MBA programs, they have very similar outcomes. So if you really resonate with the school, that's, in my opinion, what you should be going for. Maybe I shouldn't be so liberal with my talk, but SOM was a school that I really felt resonated with me the most. I came here for the first time during Admitted Student Week. I found everyone was really laid back, really relaxed, and it was just a really friendly community, which is what I wanted for the next 2 years.
Amazing. I appreciate that. And I'm wondering, as I work with first generation students and as we started to think of what being first gen might look like as an MBA student, I think one of the threads of most of the conversations that I had with students who have now graduated was this idea of having to sort of explain why they were leaving their work and why they were quitting their job and going back to school and going back to school at this level full time, and all the opportunity costs associated with that. And I don't want to speak for you, but a lot of the folks that I spoke to that decided to come to Yale anyhow, even had this additional burden of having already become sort of the breadwinners for their families, right? And so I noticed that there was this thread of, this first gen identity really presenting itself in business school students as like something that they have to explain to people whom they love, but, not necessarily knowing others who are doing it or how they may have approached it. And I know that the development of the club has been a really amazing like place to create that community. But I'm wondering if any of you have stories that you might want to share about how you described the value of an MBA to maybe members of your family who might have been familiar or unfamiliar of the potential that it had. And it doesn't have to be family, but just in general.
I can take this one. I think this was definitely a key part of my MBA journey in both figuring out whether or not I actually wanted to go on this path. And then when I had the opportunity to decide between a few different options of deciding whether Yale SOM was the right choice or not. I know I had been on the application kind of train and on the journey for a couple of years. I originally had planned to apply, I think back in 2022. If I'm getting my years right. But at that point, there were a lot of things that happened, like in my personal life and my family life, that just I had to put a pause to the process altogether. And at one point, it was even questioning myself of, is this the right choice? Like I'm in a pretty good job. Like I love the team that I was working with. I love the organization. I was making more money than any of my parents had ever made at that point. So I was in a pretty comfortable position. And it was this moment where I had to decide, okay, if I do, like, why am I doing this? Why am I thinking of pivoting into consulting? Is this the right choice for me? And then when I did decide that it was the right choice, it was kind of having to sell my mom and my dad on, hey, I may have to take loans out for this, but here is what the expected payoff is going to be. And then just having to reinforce a lot of those conversations over and over again. And I'm super grateful for my family because they've always been supportive, even if they've never 100% understood kind of the why behind it. But it was never a combative conversation. It was just more of like, why? You're already in a good spot. And what I really learned from that and what I've learned since then is both the people who really will support you and have supported you thus far, regardless of what your choice is they're going to continue to be there for you. And the thing that I think for me has been even more uplifting is that I've had the opportunity to see people who in my life, people who were close to me who I never would have even thought that like, hey, they're maybe considering going to grad school, or maybe they're not, maybe it's not even grad school, but considering changing a job that they really don't like. And seeing someone like yourself making this, like really betting big on themselves and moving across the country in my situation has allowed other people and giving them the kind of like the freedom to make bet big on themselves too. So I've really loved staying in touch with like really close friends from back home and seeing all of the cool things that they're doing now that has been as a result, and that they've told me directly, like it's been as a result because I've seen you make this huge jump on top of all of these other, like seeing my family just really continue to support me and kind of like cheer for me across the country.
That's really amazing. And I appreciate when you say having to bet on yourself, right? As an admissions officer, I think that that's some of my favorite work is reminding prospective students that you can bet on yourself, you can go to an Ivy League, you can do this, right? And I think a lot of that probably stems from my own first generation college experience, right? And knowing that there was this hidden curriculum that was going on all around me. And truthfully, I didn't really master that curriculum until after I graduated undergrad, right? And I was like, wait a minute, there was this framework that if I only mastered when I was in undergrad, I think life would have been and looked a lot different, right? And so I'm just curious, as you all went through your undergrad experience, and started your professional experience and grappled with some of these realities of having then made it. I hope we've all felt that sort of high, right? Like we've made it to the end of this chapter. I'm curious to know if one or two of you can share how you knew it was time for business school, which can be jarring. Obviously, a lot of times it comes with a lot of build up to that, and there could be lots of things at play when you decide on business school. But I'm curious to know if any of you have anything to share along that lines. Like, how did you know it was time for this?
Yeah, I can share. So I knew it was time when I was in my job and I just wasn't really happy with what I was doing. Um, but I had a great work-life balance. I felt I was paid fairly, but it still wasn't enough. I would look 5, 10 years ahead, and those weren't the positions that I wanted to be in, right? And I knew I wanted to pivot my career. That's kind of when I started thinking about business school. As a first gen student, it wasn't necessarily the first thought that came to mind. But as I started to explore the career paths out there that I might be interested in, I realized that, business school is a tried and true way to really pivot your career in many different directions. We aren't the first, we won't be the last. And it's proven to have been like a very great return on investment over a very long time horizon, right? And I also just wanted to go back to school to some extent. Kind of echoing what Sadie said, I didn't have to convince my parents this much, or didn't have to convince my parents this much time around because they saw what a great investment undergraduate was. So when they came up time around for me to say that, hey, I want to go to school again, they kind of trusted me to make the good, make it, they trusted me, they trusted that I was making a good decision that would be fruitful for myself, right?
Yeah, echoing what Kevin also said, for me, it was also like I kind of felt unhappy at my job, and I wasn't sure if what I was doing was the right position. But I think for especially for people from like the first gen low income background, career switching can be a very kind of a scary move because you don't know where you're getting yourself into. So for me, kind of MBA became the natural choice because it's almost like you're going back to school for 2 years, and there's so many opportunities open up for you as a student, and then you can really explore all the options that you potentially have and really think about the options due before choosing one. So for me, it was like even though MBA education is still costly, but it's probably like in terms of outcome, it's probably the least expensive one for me. When I think about like if I make the wrong position and end up with somewhere that I'm not happy, it's gonna be really hard time if I have to like choose out. Yeah.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that point, and I will just sort of echo this idea of an MBA being an excellent tool to do those pivots. And even our founders, right, of SOM designed the school in a way with an understanding that the students who graduate from this program will likely have multiple different careers, right, even after they're done with this. And so it does sort of set this up to be probably it's a deep breath bet, right? But it's a safe bet at the end of the day, especially if you do it in this way, right? And so, since you did touch on it, I'm wondering from the panel, what Yale SOM resources have been the most beneficial to you? Just as a student, like, we understand that first gen is is the presenting identity that we're speaking about. But even if we took a step beyond that, like what has been something as a resource at the school that you've really tapped into?
I can, so at the school, I think the second years have been stellar. I will say is just no question it has really been off limits when speaking to our second years, and I've really appreciated that and loved that because sometimes I can be a little bit shy in asking a question that I feel like I should already know the answer to. And the way that some of that really most of our second years have just even put themselves back in my shoes like about a year ago and just proactively share, hey, last year I was struggling with bidding for classes, or last year I was struggling with this. Here's what worked, or here's a person who was dealing with something similar. Let me put you in contact, or you should reach out to them. And that's with knowing them for 5 seconds, and immediately they jumped into that. And I remember how busy a lot of the second years were coming back from summer break and from their internships because all of the first years were like, hey, I have a question about this club. Hey, I have a question about your firm. Hey, I have a question about this. And all of them being just incredibly so gracious to even take the time out of their busy schedule and kind of coming back into the flow of things for quarter one or fall one that I just really, really appreciated and loved that. I think putting myself back into the shoes as an applicant about a year ago, I will say the alumni were incredible as part of this journey. So I remember talking to a few alums who were out of school for about like 15 or plus years at a variety of the programs that I was considering. And I will say as the SOM alums who I spoke to were the most enthusiastic about the community and the school and everyone that they built, everyone that they've met here and really the life that they've built outside of SOM and because of SOM. And that's something that has stayed with me and that I've been able to build really, really fruitful relationships from just that enthusiasm and excitement and just really love for this place.
I can add on that, the student body is awesome, but additionally, Yale SOM gives a lot of resources to its student clubs. That means that pretty much any day of the week, there's some sort of event going on. And it's a really good way to build a community, network, learn something new, right? I think that's something it's been invaluable during my time. And the second thing that I really enjoyed, especially in my second year, is being part of the greater Yale community. You have the liberty to take classes in other schools, most primarily in your second year, but you'll see that there are plenty of students from other schools that take MBA classes. there's a lot of events that you can participate in as an MBA student that makes you feel like you're really included in the Yale community. So that's been a really great benefit that I've only come to realize in my second year.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And while we have the time, I'd love to hear just like whatever comes to mind with not only the development, Kevin, of the First Gen Low Income Club, but like what is it? What do you all do? What are some of your marquee events? How do you support each other? And why does it now exist?
Yeah, so last year there was two MBAs which graduated this past May, who both of them were first gen, both of them were low income, and they were also participated in the Quest Bridge program, which maybe some people in this room might be familiar with. But essentially, they had shared identities that are really hard to tell unless you openly speak up about it, right? It's hard to find people who are first gen or low income. And it's important to find those people because in some regards, the MBA can be a very strange experience. There are a lot of people from a lot of very high income backgrounds. There's a lot of people from that have parents that have multiple degrees, and all that's fine. They're great people, right? But you might not always be able to relate to everything that they have experienced in life. So finding a group of people where you have some shared experiences, where you can relate to each other's struggle is really important. So Kim and staff last year started this group. It started off as an interest group. And ultimately, this is our first year being a club, and it's been a pretty eventful year as a club. So I'm part of leadership, but Cindy and Sadie are also leaders as well. Can y'all speak to some of the events that we've had that y'all have liked?
Yeah, so I think it was 2 weeks ago that we had a alumni panel with some folks from the New York City. Obviously, this was before when the Fly Club started, but we had this hope there was a group of first year and second year students going down to New York City, hosted by the club. We were able to get expenses for everybody's train trip down to New York City, and then we hosted at one of the alumni corporate, I think, corporate office. And it was just like such an incredible experience because how much vulnerability people have revealed about themselves, not just the alum, but also amongst each other. Kind of the alums were just like so candid about their experience and how they went through their flight journey, but also kind of after the panel, the group just naturally got together and mingled and started talking about those like really hard questions about kind of family obligations as a first year student, as a fly student, got all those like financial stress with being a first gen low income person. So I think it was just like such an incredible and powerful experience that it's really hard to have organically in other environments.
I will also say is the club has been hosting small group dinners to be able to build those relationships with each other and kind of across years and across programs even. So I think that has been the highlight of kind of all of the events I've gone to this year. Definitely the small group dinner within the flight community has been my favorite one. And tomorrow we have a Friendsgiving tomorrow night, so I'm really looking forward to that one too.
I have to say, I'm loving that all of our affinity groups are hosting these Friendsgivings. But then I think about intersectional identity, and I'm like, hopefully you'll be able to overlap and do that. But it's really amazing to see this come to life and to see an organic community be there, right? For all the reasons that you mentioned, and also some of the founding thoughts, Kevin, right? Like, there's definitely folks in this community. This is an unseen identity, right? There's just this thing that happened in many different ways before, but now there's this clean, clear-cut process to be able to identify other folks that look and sound and have experienced things like you might have. And so I really appreciate that. And as we move towards ending the panel part of our time together, I'd love to hear from each of you And I'm sorry to put our first years on the spot, although let me tell you, these folks have already been through a term and are wrapping up a second term. Like they're no longer newbies at this process, okay? But what has been a defining moment or maybe an unexpected win that you've experienced during your MBA journey so far? And you can take a sec to think about it.
For me, it was going to Canada with one the MBA friend over the fall break after the first quarter. I'm not a very extrovert person, and I don't get close to people very quickly. But it has been an incredible experience at Yale about like how open people are about sharing themselves. So I definitely have to say that I have found so many close friends quicker than I have ever been in my life that I was like willing to. I also don't like taking trips with people that much. So very much a solo traveler unless you're really close with me. So it's definitely for me, it was just such a incredible experience taking a weekend trip, just the two of us to a place that we've never been with like a friend that I only met for like I think a month and a half at that point, which was just kind of crazy for me personally.
This one is a little kind of more on the personal side, less more on the academic or social side. But I got the awesome chance to go to math camp before classes started, which I'm very proud of because I met some really incredible friends during those 3 days. But it happened to overlap with a week that both of my parents had the chance to visit. So they were staying here in New Haven, and kind of after I had settled into a brand new place, they were here. And the first day of math camp, which I consider my first day of class, it was really probably the last time that my parents got to walk me to my first day of class. And just to have that opportunity where we walked 20 minutes from East Rock to Evans Hall, and they dropped me off and they were like, have a good day. And I was walking in with my little backpack because I haven't been a student in like 7 years. Was just like a memory that I'm never going to forget. And it comes with this level of understanding of how privileged I am to be here, but how lucky I am to really be able to bring my family alongside me in this journey. And that's something that's a driving force for me. So just to have that little moment has been a defining moment of my experience thus far.
So for me, I think I guess the biggest win has really been the community, kind of echoing some of Cindy's thoughts. Um, the way SOM groups people is into cohorts, and unexpectedly enough, you end up becoming friends, or you end up finding your closest friends in your cohort. And I found a really great group of friends that I've made multiple trips to Vermont, to Canada, other areas in the Northeast. It's also been really great because the second year, when you don't have the structure of the cohorts, you kind of have to put yourself out there in order to maintain some of these relationships, right? But having this group of friends that stuck with me from the first year has been really great, because I always have something to do with a group of people. It's great to just have like a community, a really close-knit community that you form in the school.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing those. I owe each of you a coffee chat because I want to unpack some of these thoughts. But anyhow, thank you all for sitting on this panel and giving us a glimpse of what it might be like to be inside the community, especially around this identity of being first generation and or low income. And so we will end the panel portion right here. And we're going to transition to an exciting time. I know there's lots of questions. And so let me give you a little bit of instruction here. But before I do that, we have an awesome student who just wrapped up an interview and joined us and is ready to run and rock and roll. So can you go ahead and introduce yourself, Maria Fernanda?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Maria Fernanda, she, her, hers pronoun. Grew up in New Orleans, but I was born in Bolivia and immigrated here when I was 3. Like everyone else, I'm first gen, a Questbridge scholar, actually also a Questbridge scholar here at SOM. And I used to do, well, I guess prior to coming to SOM, I was an analytical chemist at Pfizer. So I worked in the chemistry field for about 3.5 years, and currently I am recruiting for investment banking. So that's a little bit about me. Did I miss anything? Was I supposed to say like favorite class or?
No, you're good. I'm sure you can say that as soon as they ask, because now they're going to be wondering what your favorite class is so far. But thank you so much for being here, Maria, excuse me.
Oh no, thank you for
Um,
having me. So sorry I'm late.
No worries, we've got this. So let me let you folks know what's going to happen now. So each of these students are going to host their own breakout rooms, except for Maria, who's going to join Kevin in a breakout room together. And you all will have the opportunity to sort of move about and hopefully in an intimate conversation, be able to ask whatever questions might come to mind around first-gen low income, the space, the school. These are really sharp people who have not been prompted, right? So this is going to be organic and you're going to get to hear their actual thoughts as they progress through the journey. And so I'm going to hang out in the homeroom in case anybody has any pressing admissions questions during this time. Feel free to swing by and say hello. And depending on how the conversations go, you may just be dismissed from that room. Okay. And so before I activate the rooms, I'm just going to drop my email so that you have it in case we don't come back together. And if you have any questions at all, please feel free to reach out. I'm here as a resource. Like I said, I focus on these special populations and obviously other affinity groups and identities that rise during the application process. So I'm here to help. But without further ado, I'm going to ask my colleague to go ahead and jump into those or set up the breakout rooms and release them to you all. And I will hang out here. And Maria, you'll have to click on Kevin's room, okay, to join it.